This is Who's a Good Dev, the podcast where we interview great software developers, brought to you by Greptile.com.
Cool. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. This is Who's a Good Dev, and today is our first video episode. Hello to everyone watching from home. I'm super excited about today's guest. It is Hahnbee. Hahnbee is the co-founder of Mintlify. If you've ever used documentation, just at all, for developer tools especially, you've probably used Mintlify, even if you don't know it. What are some places that use Mintlify for docs?
Greptile, of course.
That's the company that sponsored this pod.
Anthropic.
I've heard of that one too.
Pinecone.
Another blast. We love Pinecone.
Yeah, just trying to get more and more people on though. But yeah, those are some big ones.
Docs are important.
Docs are important.
Especially for a developer tool. Yeah. Because they're not easy to use sometimes. And so it's good to write down how to use them. But the topic of today's podcast is overarchingly is docs. And I want to talk about documentation, both why it matters and how to be good at it. And you are a subject matter expert on this, Hahnbee.
Thank you.
One might even say. And I think this is gonna be a fun conversation. Welcome again. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Doc.
All right. My first question for you. I wrote these down, guys. I'm preparing for the podcast now. My first question for you is, why do dev products need docs?
That's a good question. I think products, like, at some point, if your product is like technical enough, like you need some sort of written down guide on how to use it, whether it's like an actual like step-by-step thing or just like a doc, like an API. Like if you have an API, like the docs are basically the product, like in order for you to like know how to use it, or the API is a product, but
it's like the UI.
Yeah, it's the UI
Sure.
for the API. So it actually matters a lot for you to be able to access that knowledge for the user and like decrease that barrier of entry for like interacting with the API. For example, like an API reference is usually generated by an open API spec, and open API is great because you can represent like basically like every single like JSON object type.
What is open API?
It's just like a way to specify, like it's like a JSON specification or like a more specific JSON specification that like allows you to like define like the parameters of a REST API.
It has to be a REST API.
People have now been using Open API to then generate SDKs, but basically
it can't be like GraphQL.
Yeah, I don't think so.
They have their own
yeah,
thing.
I haven't like ventured a lot into the GraphQL world.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it's like I haven't seen any like overlap there, but I could be wrong. Do not quote me on this.
Interesting, because I've seen like a Linear's APIs on GraphQL, and they use Apollo for their docs.
Yeah.
It seems like it's a very specific thing.
It's different. Yeah, it's
And I was
different
curious
for sure.
if it's like open API, how broad is this thing? So for REST APIs, it's a definition of the request and response objects. For
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's really great. It allows you to like define a lot of things, but also like you can mess up using it. Like you can like actually like you can like say that something is like an object and then like accidentally say that it's like a string or something. Like you can like, and it's still like considered valid. And so then like when we have all these correct open API specifications and then we need to translate that into a UI, we actually have to put more like barriers to it and like kind of like do more validation because and I mention all of this because of the fact that we have like an API playground that allows users to input like different inputs into the API, and like without that, like the user can just put in anything. Like technically you can just make a call to the API and it'll just fail, but like it's hard for people to know why they failed, or like we're basically like providing the guardrails to allow you to experiment with the API and like decrease the chance of failure, which is super important because it's like decreasing the friction for you to like understand the value of a product. I'm sure like you guys have an API and
like speed to first successful call.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's just like I'm sure like it's like when you, for API companies, it's like when you make that call is like the aha moment.
Yeah.
And like if you're a developer, like that's like really like great that like you know how to like write an API and stuff. But like what if, imagine a world where that's like easier.
I'm sure there's like some statistic on for developer tools companies, especially the API native companies, where like what percentage of people that's like attempted to make an API call and never successfully made one. So surely is a percent. That would be an interesting percentage for like Mintlify.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, like before Mintlify it was like X%, and then after Mintlify it's since then it's like 0.2x or something.
Yeah, that's true. Like we should probably collect like do some more data analysis there. Yeah. But even like less specifically, like we've had people send us data about like just their docs viewership going up once they like switched over to Mintlify, just because it's more user friendly and like just easier to navigate and use.
Interesting. That makes sense. That would be the case. What are the best docs you've seen? Actually, we'll start with what are the best docs you've seen that are on Mintlify, and then what are the generally best docs you've seen?
I definitely think there is still like a lot for us to do in terms of like customization and being able to accomplish more outside of like what we can do right now. And so I think like the ones that are really good are the ones that do have like that level of customization. Like even like I would say like the ones that like don't look like Mintlify at all are really cool. Or when I like stumble upon Mintlify in the wild and I'm like, whoa, like this looks really nice, like I didn't know we can like look like this, and it like looks like a completely different branding, I'm always like very taken aback. But
that has to be fun.
It is fun, yeah.
Just like you're browsing the internet and then suddenly you're like, oh wait, this is built on our thing. This is like someone's like vision and project, and it's like they used our thing to build it. Yeah,
like I don't know if this actually converted, but I saw like pickleball.com like signed up, and I was like, yo, that'd be so cool if there were like docs about playing pickleball on Mintlify. And I think there's like another one where it was like driver's ed like documentation where it's like teaching you how to drive, and I'm like, that's so cool. Or like I've seen like religious text, like which is like in a different language. We were like, what is this? And we're like,
Mintlify.
Hopefully this is not like, you know, politically impacting us. I don't think it is, but like free speech, you know, like people can do whatever they want with Mintlify. But like,
what if like developer things though? Like what for developer tools? What is what is the best, highest quality thing? What about it makes it so good?
Okay, so I wish like I've tried more of our like companies using us, because like there are so many companies that are doing cool innovative things that use us that I haven't necessarily like 100% grasped in terms of like what they're doing. But I would say like ones that I've personally used, like Unki, like we use them for like just like managing our like secrets for our customers, like generating secrets for them. Like I thought that was pretty well done. And then I also use them physical, and like I know Vlad put in a lot of work to make it look like their new branding. So I like appreciate that.
Yeah, we're like aesthetically pleasing. Yeah. But in terms of like the usability, so I know like Stripe comes up as the default example of really good docs. I've used them. I honestly don't think that they're that good, but it might just be that the product is so complicated that the fact that it's even become usable through the docs is like
a feat. Yeah.
But I'm curious, what is it about it that people like so much? Like, what makes those docs so good versus other ones? Like, there's little things. So there are the one other than the details. Like, I know that there's like auto-populating the API key and stuff. But what about them in the way that they're structured? Is it the language that's written, like the completeness of it? Like, what have you seen? It's like, oh, this is what really good docs are.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there are like some large things I could touch upon, but I do want to say before I get into that the details definitely matter. Where like I feel like it's something that Han and I have cared a lot about from the beginning. And like nowadays, like we have like a lot more customers onboarding onto us. And it's like kind of hard for us to like manage like the bigger things going on and the small things. But recently we like made a small quality of life improvement where like the languages sync across like the code examples across the pages. Like if you switch to Python on one page, it'll be Python on another. And like this tweet like did phenomenal. And I was like, and I know that like the statistics of a tweet don't necessarily like correlate with
this is Mintlify doing that.
Like we just like we made a PR, merged it, made a quick video like showcasing it, made a quick tweet, and that tweet did better than like the past 10 tweets combined. And we were like, what the heck? Like,
interesting. It's just, and the only thing that happens is like, well, I switched one of the, so this is just like, it's
I
like,
switched
to make it more
pages.
clear.
Yeah.
That there's code snippets around Mintlify inside like docs that are built on Mintlify, and they will usually have options between like curl and like the Python or whatever it is. And you switch one of them to Python as a consumer of the docs, and it switches all of the blocks across the website. Okay. Yeah.
And like, this was such a small thing, and it did so well. And I was like, we have always cared about this, but I feel like gradually over time, our mindset has been like, oh, like this isn't gonna have like a huge impact on the company. And it's still not huge, but I'm like, this does have an impact. Like this is like part of the reason why people like using us. And yeah.
It's the principle of it too, I'm sure, which is like to me, that's a realization of, there's two things. One, there's a lot of these little things that matter a lot for the overall experience. And also, it sounded like everything that we've talked about around what makes docs good is nothing to do with the content that's written down, and everything to do with the experience of using it. And I wonder if like people actually just pay like vastly more attention to the code snippets and like the fact that the key is populated than they do reading the actual text.
That's a great point. So I think that like when developers like go on docs, like they come with a goal. And like I find like, I think whoever is maintaining the docs, or like Mintlify plus like the person who's editing, like their job is to help them reach that goal as quickly as possible. Like,
okay, that's very insightful. So so a lot of people might look at a docs page as a tour of the product with instructions and everything. Whereas what you actually want to do is someone who came in, wanted to do a specific thing, get them there as quickly as possible.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. This is why like the search is important.
I was just gonna ask.
This is why Command F and having like keywords that like are easily searchable is important. It's kind of like, you know, like the like GeoGuessr speedrunners. Yeah. It's kind of like that. Like you're kind of like,
how
just like
quickly can you get to the right page?
Yeah. Like at least that's what I do as a developer. Like I come in to docs with a goal. Like people don't like reading docs all the time. Maybe there's someone who like kind of like you guys, like who like reading the user manual all the time.
I usually, because I'm so impatient with developer docs, that when I use docs around Mintlify, but also this is how I noticed that there are some docs that are not on Mintlify, because I'll go Command K and then like the thing that shows up is just a search bar, and I'm like, oh, this is not on Mintlify. This is bad. There's this is an ad actually, the whole podcast. You hit Command K and it pulls up a bar, and I just type what the thing is that I'm trying to do, and then it like basically writes effectively a custom docs page for me from everything that's in the docs already. That's what I like about it. That's like when we were picking our docs provider, of course, like Mintlify is the default option, and then we like explored other ones just because it was responsible to. And yeah, you know, there's other docs providers, but the two things that made it like almost like it was very obvious that we had to go with Mintlify was the docs really pretty, but and the fact that there's like this feature of being able to say I'm trying to do X, which almost eliminates like design, like the design of your documentation structure almost doesn't matter if you have really, really good search and discovery. To kind of go back to your initial question though, like I started by responding that saying like the details matter, and they very much do. Like even like I remember watching like a customer like go through the docs, and like they were covering over like in the entire code snippet as opposed to using the like copy to clipboard button. Oh, interesting. Wow.
And I think it's just because that's what people are used to.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I was like, after seeing that, and I feel like I do that too. Like, and
sometimes you only want a part of it.
Or you just want a part of it. But I also think that like, if you want all of it, it could be like, we could decrease the friction of doing that by just like saying like, when you click on it, like it just like copies to clipboard or something like that. I don't.
Oh, sure.
You know,
it does that right now.
Well, right now it's the button, but I'm saying like the whole thing. Like
you should. Okay. I thought I have used at least one code snippet somewhere where you clicked on it and it copies it.
Yeah.
And that's right. So which is like, okay, you do some step to get to an eventual goal. And there's a couple of steps after that first step. Yeah. But if it's that first step is basically like you're definitely trying to do the final thing, then just make it happen at first step. That makes sense.
Yeah. And there's also like
so convoluted that I can if I had a whiteboard right now, I would be very useful.
Yeah, but like there are like, yeah, I think code snippets matter a lot.
Yeah.
I think that there are things we can do to make sure that they're up to date, perhaps using AI, but also like automated test cases within documentation,
Oh, that's good.
which is
I didn't even
cool.
think of that.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you can
Like a Postman-esque thing where like with some periodicity all the API endpoint, like the API playgrounds all kind of run themselves and see, or like the
Yeah.
code snippets run themselves and see if it's
Yeah.
good, see if they still work.
Yeah, or even there's like we can make requests to the API playground. We can also like figure out how to like just extract the code snippets from a guide and make sure that they're all executable in order. Something like that. There's like a lot of like power that comes with the fact that like it's in GitHub. Like
Yeah.
you can do a lot. Yeah. But okay, anyway, that was also still a part of my tangent. I would say that I feel like I disagree with the fact that like the order or like the structure doesn't matter. It definitely does. I just think that there is a lot of emphasis on everything else in today's day and age, where if you want to get like a good developer experience.
Okay.
Like there was a day in which like everything was just a static page.
Yeah.
But like all the work that Stripe has done to make sure that the interactivity is there, that the friction is low, and that like the API keys are just there, and like syncing. I'm pretty sure they do the syncing across code snippets across pages too. Like they do this like attention to detail that's like just so chef's kiss.
Yeah.
That like makes it like delightful.
Yeah.
To work with, but I've actually been reading Stripe stocks too, and I've kind of been like also like making sure I'm paying attention to whether like the guides are good or not. And like I feel like they are like you just have to I think the one thing that I have to say about like ordering content is just to keep the goal in mind and order it in terms of the goal. Like for example, like you can have education as a goal. It's like, oh, like there's all this jargon and you need to know the definitions and the terms. Keep that all on one page. Like the goal of this page is education.
Yeah.
And then like if you have like another page that's just purely a guide, like, and the goal of it is clearly just to achieve this one thing that you want to get to by the end of the guide, keep it short and simple and just like get to the point and like make sure you have that there, you know? And then like you'll have like API references, and like if you're doing more creative things to like work with like with your API or stuff, like it's more up to the user. Just like make sure that all the resources and information is there for them to succeed. You know?
That makes a lot of sense. So then I guess there's two things there. First is what you were saying about attention to detail with Stripe in particular. I think there's this Patrick Collison quote where he says that I think we are like naturally drawn to beautiful things and where there's a lot of attention to detail. And fundamentally it's because like it shows you that the person that made it cared, and they must have also cared about the implementation behind the scenes if they cared so much about how it looked in the front. Which like, I mean, it's not always true, but it often is. And there's like almost like an evolutionary inclination towards like very high attention to detail products. Yeah,
it's interesting. Like I feel like the narrative around craft and attention to detail has been coming up more and more lately.
Yeah.
Where like
I think software is entering that world, which hardware and products did it some time ago, which was like it's going from these are supposed to be functional and like not much more to like, well, functionality has been almost like saturated in a lot of verticals, and so like at this point it's about like taste almost.
I do think that like the taste and functionality go hand in hand, and like I feel like I'm a bad like creative designer like in terms of like branding and stuff, because as a developer I really like simple minimal things that just get to the point that are functional. And so like I interact with design a lot. I'm not like on Figma all the time, but like I have a lot of thoughts about how things should be done in terms of design and UX and UI. And like for me, it's just like that simplicity. And one thing about that as well is that like, yes, it'll show in like the details of the aesthetics and such, and like that will be cohesive. And like you don't want like the aesthetics of it to be distracting, you know, just because it's like either bad or too crazy, too zany. But like yeah, I just want to get it to the point kind of thing. I kind of lost my train of thought in the middle of that, but yeah.
I want to go back to what you said about interactivity. So when I first was preparing for this episode, I was thinking about like, okay, well, so documentation is an exercise in technical writing. And so what I thought would spend a lot of our time on here was figuring out like, okay, how do you write docs in a way that makes them like very highly functional and like enjoyable to consume and like easy to follow, etc. But so, and then and instead now there's two directions. One, I think we should go up a level of abstraction and say, well, the goal of docs is to, and maybe docs is not even the right word. What you're actually doing here is, this is almost, like you said, it's a product for developer tools. So how do we structure a API product in a way that makes it very easy to get started with? Just like and then you're solving a product problem like you would be with any other product. Yeah. And so I gathered two things from what you said. One was focusing a lot on like, how do we get people as close as possible to the actual experience of using the product, which is like the API playground is an example of that. And like you said, with the guardrails, you can put in on the API playground that you can't put in like literally the console. And the second thing I want to ask you about is so you said with regards to structuring it, instead of like, you should have purposes for every page, and then that purpose should map to something that a user that appears on the docs would want to do. Can you tell me, are there like examples that come to the top of your head of docs you've seen where like they did a really good job of that, where like, okay, this person approaches like product X and they probably want to do one of A, B, or C, and they have pages for A, B, and C?
I think this is why people like Stripe, and I think also Next.js does a good job at this too.
Yeah.
Where like they have like this education section that's gamified. Even it like tells you how many points you've gotten through like learning about Next.js and how to set things up, which I thought was really cool. And then they also have just like guides about the different features. And then after like you're done reading the guides, at the very end they have links to the API reference. And I think that structure is really smart. At least it worked for me when I was like going through it and learning more about Next.js. Like it's like, okay, like I've accomplished a goal by reading this. Like I actually went directly all like through these three paths where it's like, okay, first I'm gonna do this like general education thing, gonna skim through it as fast as possible so I can learn as fast as possible. And then the next step, like let's learn, I now know which feature I care about, like let's learn more about this feature. And then it's like, oh, like now I'm implementing it and I actually need to know more about the parameters and the API. Let me look at the API reference. Chef's kiss.
I wonder if Stripe docs could get even better than if they had. So okay, so let's say I'm a developer and I'm working on something where there's like some sort of usage-based billing, and the reason I want to use Stripe's API is because I want to set up like some sort of metering and then bill my customers at the end of the month.
Yeah.
And I wonder if Stripe has this, because it at least used to not, as far as I remember. Just one of the pages is just, here's how to build usage-based billing or like metered billing. And then everything you could possibly need to know that, starting from literally like first principles of like, how do you install Stripe? How do you get started on the SDKs? Here's everything you need to do. It's almost like your docs are, again, not specifications for your product, but rather like a library of wiki articles that all have like a purpose of how to get you somewhere.
Yeah. Okay, so I literally was reading Stripe docs last night because we need to automate some more things in Stripe. Like, I think they do that. I think it's a little bit more verbose. I have heard that like they've kind of decreased in quality over time. And maybe this is another learning. I also heard that in the early days, all the developers were maintaining the content. And now since Stripe has gotten so big, they've hired like technical writers for it. And I think that like a big thing for like technical documentation to be good is for the developers to write it, but also the developers.
Yeah.
The developers aren't always the best writers, but they definitely have the most context into.
I wonder if that makes the docs worse, because they're like, so the reason I write the docs is because I didn't implement the product, but I use the product a lot, and so I write it from the perspective of a user, and it's more intuitive to me, because a lot of the stuff that is obvious to the rest of my team isn't obvious to me.
That's true.
Ideally, someone even less well versed in the product would actually, well, it's kind of weird. We're like, we would want someone to write docs as they go from knowing very little about the product to knowing a lot about the product.
Yeah.
Except like then they can't keep writing the docs. Now they know too much.
Yeah, you definitely like, I think this goes with any writing. You have to be like empathetic and put yourself in the shoes and understand like what goals your reader is going to achieve and everything. But yeah, totally agree. Like, I think that there's a lot of context like that we miss as developers writing the docs because we're so familiar with the product, and you have to like put yourself in the shoes of someone who has no familiarity with it. But also like, if we're talking about like documentation staying up to date, like the person who's going to be the best at like covering at least the basis of a new feature or like a new change is going to be the developer making the change.
Yeah.
Like you should strive for a culture where every new feature, like the developer just like writes a doc for it, and it's like a part of the task.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I guess one thing here is like separate, like the failure mode of separating developers that are like making the product from the documentation. What are some other failure modes you see with how people write docs, or like when you consume docs and you're like, oh, this is like a obvious mistake?
Ooh, oh man, I think this is my personal preference, but
I name names.
No, we're not doing that. This is my personal preference, but I really like don't think docs should be verbose. Like that's like kind of like my underlying point with documentation.
Clarity over completeness.
Clarity, yeah. Like you shouldn't like have it be like, you should do this because of XYZ. You should just be like, do this.
Yeah.
You know? Just like get to the point. Like we all know why you're here. You're not here to just like read. Yeah. You know, like you're trying to accomplish something. Like let's just get to it.
Yeah,
like
they're you want to make them as functional as possible and do that with like, so almost you're trying to minimize the information and maximize the functionality.
Yeah, or like the information should like purpose as functionality. Like no extra information is needed.
There's no non-functional information.
Yeah. And then like if the function is knowledge, put that in a different place. Like don't try to do knowledge and accomplish this goal at the same time. Yeah, because it's like you're not trying to accomplish both at the same time. Maybe you come for a reason and then you're like, like this is kind of confusing to me, I want to learn more, and then you go to another page and it has more, and that's where you like kind of go more into the depths of things. But like if it's all in one page, like that's like too much. Like that's like our attention spans are short.
Like you said about separating knowledge from function, because like you were talking about the glossary of terms is definitely knowledge, not function. But then like, how do I set up metered billing in Stripe that one's definitely functional. Like I don't really care why I should do any of this. I should just do it. Yeah. And like, here's everything you need to do. Here's the code.
This is why AI is so good though. Like you could just be like, I want to do this, and then it'll like point you directly to where.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah.
So there's I know that's something that you guys have a lot of focus on in Mintlify. It is a hard problem. Yeah. I don't know what like most developers' opinions are. I think it's really good the way it is right now. I've been really liking it. I think there's like updates recently, and I've really enjoyed using it. I think it was already pretty good, but it's definitely better. Like I've been able to do a little bit more, ask for like some more trickier things, and it gets them right.
Shout out Anthropic.
Anthropic are you using Claude?
Yeah. Claude like made things a lot more reliable. I
Claude
think
has been great.
Yeah, Claude is crazy.
Yeah, we let users switch between GPT and Claude because some of our customers have like GPT endpoints that they want to use, or like they only trust OpenAI, whatever the reasons. But like for everyone else, we like say for now default to using Claude.
Yeah, we're default to Claude.
Which of course, like every 3 months, the model changes.
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen in a couple months? But right now, it's Claude.
Yeah, right now, at this moment, it is August 2nd, 2024. Claude 3.5 Sonnet is the state of the art.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, I want this snippet. I want showing up in like a like short film about the history of AI.
I like how we both like looked at the camera and we were like, Claude.
Today, August 2nd. Like, this is not sponsored.
Wait, okay. Last thing I'm going to say about Claude, but like, I think it's so fascinating that everyone used to have like ChatGPT up as a tab, and now it's being replaced by Claude. Yeah.
But it's weird. Not only is currently the model better, but this is the first, because the model became better for the first time, use the UI. The UI is better. The fact that it puts the code on the side and everything.
Oh, okay.
The UI between, and maybe I haven't used the GPT UI in a little bit, but it's like not nearly as sophisticated as Claude's UI is.
Yeah. Like for some reason in my head, when like ChatGPT started getting really popular, like it just like was in my head that it couldn't be replaceable. Yeah. Like it just had to be chat.openai.com, you know? But like it's being replaced by Claude, which is so interesting to me.
Yeah. And Claude is a better name than ChatGPT. That was tragic. Is they too quickly. It's a funny thing. Like they talk about how it doesn't really matter what you name a product at the start, but before it gets very popular, you have like a window, and like that window is normally years for most companies.
Okay,
and
but
GPT got 30 days.
we have to be cognizant of the fact that we live in a bubble in San Francisco of the startup bubble, and like a lot of the world knows ChatGPT, but not like average consumer
But it's
doesn't
like,
know
it's weird,
Claude.
but like they never got to name it because like ChatGPT wasn't.
It was just, like,
actually-
there.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was there. Like
yeah.
they never got to actually give it a name.
And then blew up.
Which kind of sad, yeah. They come up with a cool name because they learned their lesson because they named the video thing Sora, which is kind of a cool name. And Whisper is a cool name for a voice model.
True.
Yeah. ChatGPT is a terrible name.
Yeah.
Claude is an okay name.
Yeah. It's alright.
Yeah. It's,
Anyway,
it's a name. So now, when I think of Mintlify and I think of docs, we transitioned from being a SaaS company to an API company earlier this year, and that made our docs like very, very important. And so I spent a lot of time like, sort of, obviously working on docs, also intellectually thinking about what docs were and why they mattered. And to me, my conclusion generally has been, okay, so like companies that build products for developers are not like companies that build for consumers or companies that build for businesses. There's like a whole different third thing. They have some things in common with consumer, which is that like it's often bottom up. And so like you might be reaching just individual people directly, and that's how you get traffic, which is not usually the case for enterprise software. And then it has something in common with B2B software, which is the reason people get it is because it increases like business productivity. It usually serves a business function.
For sure.
But it's its own third thing because it's like a very specific, common shared thing between the two. And so when I think of Mintlify, I think of Mintlify not only as a docs company, I think of it as a like go-to-market platform for B2D, which is this third type of motion that is new. Because would you say it's new? Because I think it was like, well, PayPal was financial infrastructure for the internet, and then Stripe was like, well, PayPal as a product should be more like developer-y. And then more and more things, and I think of then like Resend. Or SendGrid before that.
Yeah.
Like a lot of things that it wasn't obvious that they should be B2D products became B2D products.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what your take is. What is business developer? Why is it different from everything else? And then how do docs fit into the story of like how do we make really good B2D go to market?
Yeah, for sure. So what a great question. So we're definitely B2B2D. Like definitely like the end, like we have a customers and our customers have the end users who consume the content and they are developers. And I completely agree that it's a go-to-market strategy. I think this narrative doesn't really like resonate too much with like people doing side projects for Mintlify, but like for the companies who are using Mintlify, like it is for sure like a tagline that we like to use is like documentation that converts users.
Yeah.
And for people who aren't like, caring, like thinking about users, like it doesn't really make sense, doesn't really hit. But for people who do, like it like makes
clicks.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like I convert on things whether the like documentation is good.
Yeah. It's like a sales tool for sure. And it's definitely like a go-to-market motion. Like sometimes we see screenshots of the docs and on LinkedIn when someone like creates like a new feature or a new endpoint, and it's like so like wild every time that happens because we're like, oh, like that's our UI, but people are like using it for marketing purposes. I've seen that and thought about the fact that like maybe we could even take a step further and create like really easy to use template assets for like marketing purposes. It's like really good for Mintlify because people are just naturally sharing about our product because they're like promoting their own product in a way. Yeah. So definitely I think docs plays a very big role in that sales process to some extent. And I definitely we already kind of touched upon this, but like we live in a day and age where like developer experience matters.
Yeah.
Like I think that maybe there was a time before where like people didn't really view it too much as an asset, but I think that companies like Stripe, HashiCorp, like Twilio, like SendGrid, like all of those things, like they all like put in effort into their docs and it paid off. And like people are kind of looking up to that as an example. And I think that a large reason why Mintlify exists as it does today is to like help other companies, like new companies, reach that bar of like developer experience as quickly as possible. Because it's it's hard. Like if you're gonna be spending like that much time like having attention to detail and making sure that experience is good, like that is a whole product of its own. Like I could tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then now like it's changing even more with like AI being a part of the picture. And like, I think that there's a lot of talk about whether like the world is going to become like less technical, whether like developers aren't going to be in the picture anymore. But I actually think the world is becoming more technical and the barrier of entry is just getting lower.
Yeah.
And like it's actually like very important that like we all still stay technical, and it's just going to be more and more prevalent that like you can like consume this content and like be able to like accomplish things with it. Like you could do so much more with an API than just having a UI. Like I'm sure you know this. Like this is why you like have an API.
Yeah.
So I think it's just going to become more and more important, especially like as like you know, humans are the ones primarily like reading and consuming this content right now, but soon it's going to be like just models doing it. It's going to be like machine to machine. Like yeah, it's exciting to think about. Like like this source of truth and knowledge is important.
I like the idea of a post docs world, where it's not post docs, but like docs are like the way. Okay, so I go to like Anthropic docs, powered by Mintlify, and there's just like a glowing orb, and it asks me what I want to do, and I say I'd like to make a LLM app in Go, and it's like okay, and then I wait 2 seconds, and it like generates a Go quick start for me. Yeah, and it knows me, and it knows I don't know Go. So it starts by telling me how Go works.
Yeah.
I really like that idea. We're like docs that know how much you know. Because I was like docs would be different for. So I used some database recently that was also on Mintlify, and it got me thinking. It was like, well, I have never worked with Postgres before, and these docs are really good for someone who hasn't worked with Postgres because they cover like a lot of the stuff that is obvious to Postgres people. However, if I was a Postgres developer, these docs are 5 times too long. And I wonder if there's a world where like the docs adapt to the reader and they change depending on who you are.
This is like, yeah, this kind of goes into like the interactivity we were talking about before. Like, okay, now like, you know, we can obviously programmatically like fill in the API token and like sync the code examples. But imagine like you're looking at the docs from Japan. It's in Japanese now.
Yeah.
Like AI can do that. AI can power that. Or like, yeah, even like, yeah, your different skill levels. Like there's a lot of
adaptive skill level
interactivity and customization that can happen. Level. Yeah.
And I wonder if there's a long-term incumbency that you can establish here by being like, well, if the more stuff that's on Mintlify, you can start doing things where like there's a user base. I think Shopify kind of did this, where like there's another reason now to use Shopify is that like there's autofill for credit cards if you use their like Shopify checkout. And I've checked out on Allbirds, when I go to Gymshark, it fills out automatically because they're both on Shopify. And I wonder if there's like some version of that from Mintlify where let's say there's multiple like places that want a GitHub token, and I integrate with GitHub and I use like one of the Mintlify docs and use them with GitHub. And so I was able to, like, I populated a token there. And then like 2 weeks later, I am using a different docs product that's also on Mintlify. And it'll be like, hey, I know you used like this GitHub token last time when you were working on this other product. Do you want to just populate it here?
If our customers are into that, like I think we totally could. Like it sounds like a little scary with like the like
I think
privacy
tokens
concerns.
might not be like maybe not tokens, like but other stuff. Where, like where one of the like, and then at that point it's like, well, once we've gotten to critical mass, every net new product needs to use Mintlify. Yeah, because if you don't use Mintlify, then like what are you gonna do? Like there's entire world developers. It's so much harder to shake that off then. Even
without like AI in the picture, I think like people are becoming more and more familiar with like how like people are getting into a rhythm of how they interact with the product, where like generally people are just getting more used to like working with Mintlify docs, where like it will get
I'm definitely in that group,
like an advantage to like using it. But yeah, like I've thought of that, of the things that you're also mentioning, like like kind of becoming like medium.com where it's like some sort of page where you can see everything and like
all the docs.
Yeah.
Like a centralized product search engine of like, I just moved the camera. Sorry guys.
Earthquake.
Oh no. No, it's just I forgot this on a tripod that's on the ground.
We get it, you're tall.
What can I say? Just it's horrible. Planes are bad. Concerts, terrific.
Planes probably suck.
Planes are the worst. I have to always get the emergency exit.
Oh yeah. The knees.
Yeah, you gotta get the emergency exit, and then they're like, "Can you help if the plane goes down?"
You're like,
I can try.
Yeah.
I can help is a big one. Skill issue. That's great. So there's a few things that I have taken away from this conversation that are useful, I think, for people that are working on developer-facing products and want to write docs. Don't do a house tour. Do a start with like, what are my users trying to do with my product, and then have a very quick way to do each of those.
Yeah.
Focus on interactivity. Don't be verbose. Separate knowledge from instruction.
Yeah.
What else? What's something that's like, I'm writing docs, I'm starting today. Here's everything Hahnbee has learned from years of working in technical documentation.
I think you covered it. I think those are the main things. Yeah.
Incredible. There should be an article on the side.
Dude, we should just like make a transcript for this and then throw
I was thinking the whole time, I was like, there should be show notes.
Okay.
And they should have, and there should be like a summary of here's what I learned from talking to Hahnbee about docs.
Yeah.
Do you have like, does Mintlify have a guide on how to write great docs?
We have to make more content, but this is great. This is a great start.
That's like the obvious one to do. You got to do that one. It's
I've been busy working on products.
That's true. That's why the product is so good. It's because Hahnbee isn't out here recording podcasts like useless startup founder.
Wait, one last thing I'll say about like to kind of top it off is that I think that like developers are a very like, I was going to say stingy, but that's not the right word. Like particular audience where like it seems like this attention to detail matters a lot, and like having a good developer experience is like something that we talk about a lot. But as we've been growing and I'm like leading engineering and like product and like just trying to like figure out the company and everything, like I don't think actually that there is a big difference between like building a great experience for developers versus just like anybody. Cause like, obviously like we don't want, like nobody likes being sold to, but like in terms of like sales, I feel like it's like, this is like kind of related to sales, like just having a good developer experience too. But also like, I feel like we always talk internally about like a non-technical and technical audience. And like, I genuinely believe that developers deserve a good user experience. And like if the UI is intuitive and functional and good, then like they'll want to use the UI. Like I feel like the narrative seems to be like, oh, like developers,
the example here.
Yeah, like developers don't care, you know? It's like they'll figure it out. Like you don't need to give them much to like figure out how to do it. But like, what if you just made it easier?
Yeah.
You know, like
you can't be meaningfully worse than the next worst one, at least.
Yeah. Like you obviously want to give them flexibility so that they can do what they want to do with whatever tools you provide them with. Yeah. But like provide them with tools that make it easier. Like I don't think that like, and I like, you know, I've been working with like other more non-technical tools like Ashby, and I think that like every SaaS is like a database wrapper or like a spreadsheet wrapper, it's just like a way to like make it easier for you to like do these things, and like that persists through and through, like for developers and non-technical people, like just across the board. Like for product, I guess I'm just like, my main point here is that like when you're building products, like all of these things matter. And that
makes sense. There's definitely a specific attention to detail that developers do. And my theory on this is that the downsides of later finding out that there was sloppiness in any part of the product are so bad. Because so we used a unnamed CSV importer library once, and the docs were a little sloppy. And we were like, whatever, docs are sloppy. And then like I think 6 or 8 weeks into it, like when we actually launched it, there was a lot of bugs that users surfaced. There were a lot of bugs we met along the way that we've worked on fixing, and almost like it trained my brain to pick on this almost obvious thing, is that like if they're sloppy in their docs, their product is sloppy, and if it's a developer product and it's sloppy, that means my production is now sloppy because of them, not me. And I introduced plenty of bugs without the help of CSV importer unnamed.
Simplicity and functionality is key.
And the refinement of docs is like almost preparing the user for what's going to be a refined product.
That's so true. You're right. Like you can totally tell if like something's not going to be good if their docs aren't there.
That's another reason why Mintlify looking really pretty makes such a big difference. It's almost the same thing as like your front end looking really pretty as a SaaS app.
It's like you're showing that you care.
It's like I care about this enough to. But the entertaining thing here is that SaaS harder. Like people have tried to build like primitives to build SaaS and like to front ends for SaaS. And React is probably React with some sort of like component library is the closest thing we've got to that. Except I guess APIs are so much more standardized than SaaS is as an industry, as like a type of product, that you can actually have a product like Mintlify with fairly high order primitives. And like because most API products fundamentally have a lot more in common than like two SaaS products do. Fascinating. What's next for Mintlify? Are you hiring?
We are hiring. If you're interested, definitely if you're watching this and you want to work at Mintlify.
You made it all the way to the end. You must really care about docs.
Please hit me up. Like here, I'll literally drop my email, hahnbee@mintlify.com. Couldn't have guessed that one.
The spelling we should go over.
HAHNBEE at mintlify.com.
Mint spelt the plant way.
Yes.
Just making sure. That's Hahnbee Mintlify. They're hiring. I've met their team. It's the best. Their office is beautiful. I probably shouldn't say where it is, but it is nice though. I can tell you that. It's in Northern California.
Yes. Greptile's also hiring.
We're also hiring. Yes. We also use Mintlify for docs. So like it or not, you're gonna use Mintlify somehow. Whether you work at either of these companies. If you're a developer tools product and you want to write docs, check out Mintlify. I use it. I think it's really good. And you can write docs in your code editor in Markdown, and it turns into React, into like really nice React. It's beautiful. I recommend it highly. Hahnbee, this was terrific. I think this was helpful to anyone who wants to write docs and wants them to be good. And I enjoyed how much of it was a philosophical conversation about the future of documentation. Of course. I'm happy to be chatting with you too. Thank you for having me. Great. Very cordial. We're actually friends in real life. Goodbye. Goodbye. This has been Who's a Good Dev.